Thank you, everybody. Oh, man. So, Shanda and I got to spend a little bit of time with Kirby and Fiona and their team last night. And I just don't have the words to honor these people. You understand that it's one thing to carry solid theology. It's another thing to embody that theology in every area of your life, right? This couple should be recognized. They should be honored for embodying the culture of heaven in everything that they do, right? When the Queen of Sheba visited the king, she looked at the condition of his followers to determine the success of his kingdom. And there's radiance coming from the entire group that travels with them. We have a saying at Legacy, if it's in the pulpit, it's in the pews. That can be a really good thing, and that can be a really bad thing. But you can't create wow culture without a mother and father that are walking it out, living it every day, and laying their lives down for the people that they're influencing. And they're influencing every nation. And they've given their lives for this. And it's, to be honest with you, terrifying to share a pulpit with this man. And it's an absolute honor. Your team told me that you haven't done that in a while, where you co-teach. So I'm grateful, unbelievably humbled that you'd allow me to share. And I don't have the words to welcome this man, but I do have the energy. So get on your feet. Get on your feet for Prophet Kirby!
Thank you, Pastor. Okay. Wow. Okay, so today is my final session. So if you've not come for the last couple of sessions, I'm really sorry for you. Simply because it's going to be a stretch, okay? So if you've not come, just put your hand on your heart and say, please stretch me. Because either you're going to get it or you're going to get very offended. Because you need context in everything, right? Okay? So I'm just praying right now that if you've not been here, that context will come upon you. Because you need to get it. And if you get this, I promise you to change your life. Now, I'm not saying that lightly. I'm coming with experience. My name is Kirby De Lanerolle, if you're here for the first time. I'm from a country called Sri Lanka. We have 1.5% charismatic Christians for the last 50 years, or when charismania ever started. Okay, when did it start? 1900s, the Pentecostal revival at Azusa Street started, so they started speaking in tongues. Okay, so from 1900 to 2023, just imagine, we have 1.5% tongue-talking Christians. Wow. So the AOGs didn't do it. The Four Squares couldn't do it. Okay?
Come on.
The Methodists, who I'm a part of, sure couldn't do it. Because the country is a stronghold of ancient civilization. It's a stronghold of wisdom. The first hospital in the world started in Sri Lanka. Okay? So, what would it take for someone to do what we are doing in Sri Lanka now? Okay? Just to understand, in 9 months, we grew to 600 churches. Come on, 9 months. Yeah. Okay? It would take knowledge.
Right.
My people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Come on.
Just to give you a background, my pastors are beaten up, arrested, sometimes killed. This is my daily life. Today, yesterday, I'm dealing with pastors, police, government persecution, churches closed down, people about to be arrested. This is our daily life. Yeah. When we decided to serve the Lord in Sri Lanka, we didn't have to. I was a very successful business person. I was a public servant. I was an advisor. I was one of the youngest advisors to the cabinet of ministers, what you call the Senate. I'd made my money by the time I was 19, 20 years old. I was printing all the tickets, the lottery tickets in the country, 22 million or 32 million tickets a week I used to print. So I didn't have to serve the Lord. So I'm going to tell you a story. And with the story, I'm going to back the story up with the doctrines that are necessary for you. And in the middle of it, I might come around if you are interesting. Okay? I might come around and I will prophesy, and I will do some crazy stuff that the others have seen in the last 2 days, okay? But for that, I need it to be epic. Energy, positive emotions, absolute immersion, and of course, the body and community, okay? And it's going to be fun. So at the end of this, I'll show you a video, and after the video, we're going to break bread and do communion. Okay? And when we break bread and do communion, you're going to do it in a way that we at Wildlife Church, we do it, and you're going to receive something. I was in Marshall, Texas, and we had an amazing meeting there. 5 people got healed of cancer. 2 people stage 4. Just understand. Okay? One guy had a lump on his chest. The doctors have said, you got cancer. He postponed the meeting. As he postponed the operation, he got healed completely. This was just last week. This is my inheritance last week. Okay? Yesterday we saw that I just demonstrated, I spoke about it, and people saw marks disappear off their body at the service. Yes, this was just the day before yesterday. Okay? So we are coming from a stream of signs, wonders, and miracles, and I'm going to tell you a story about signs, wonders, and miracles, and you'll understand the power of signs, wonders, and miracles to change a nation, to impart a revelation, and to speak a theology. Okay? Miracles and signs, wonders speak amazing, massive amounts of theology. If you can just process it, Jesus says, remember it and try to understand it. And if you remember it and try to understand it, the miracle of the loaves, the theology is in it. Okay? So get ready. Are you ready now? Yeah? It's going to get really, really good. Okay. Okay, but I need vibes, okay? All right. So here it is, okay? We're going to start off with a story. And the story is, I'll give you a bit about my life when I started off. So it's a testimony plus this, okay? When I started off in my life, I was born to a Christian family. My grandfather was a Methodist priest, and therefore I was brought up on the mission field, okay? So the Methodists at that time, they were extremely reputable church back home, as you know, very, very established. I was baptized by the bishop of the Methodist church. And therefore, I was named Kirby, which means brought from the kirk or the church. So I was brought up, always been told that one day I would be someone, you know. And the someone was literally maybe a priest, maybe something else. But I was brought up saying I was going to be powerful. At my young age of 11 or 12, my grandfather passed away with an aneurysm in his head. And at that point of time, closer to his death, he would speak in a strange language. Okay, and I didn't know what it was at that time, but I could directly interpret exactly what he was saying.
Wow, come on.
And he never spoke, he couldn't talk properly, but he would keep talking in a language, and I was the only one who was brought into the room to listen to what he was saying and then communicate back to my mom and my grandmother what he was saying. And a lot of the times he was asking for prayer, and so I would lay my hands at a young age of maybe 11 or 12 and pray over him. Okay? Wow. But he passed off, and he left me a legacy of priesthood. And so if you trace back my family, we have 500 years of priesthood. You must understand America is just 200 years old. Sri Lanka is a 2,500-year-old, a civilization. We have architecture that is ancient there. So when we go into a mission field, we need to understand the field.
Come on. Right.
And if you go into a mission field, and you are right now in a mission field, America is this mission field, if you don't understand the field, and if you don't understand the dynamics of the field, and if you don't understand the structure of the field, and if you don't understand what you're coming up against in the field, you will face certain amount of pressure. because of this, the church was established with the foundations of what is known as the Apostolic, then the Prophetic, then the pastoral. And so the church was a design that God had purposed so that life could be given to heathen nations and failing civilizations. When I say failing civilizations, I'm just not saying that people are uncivilized. I'm saying the church democratizes knowledge and power. The church is what set up your Harvards and your Yales and your you name it. All your Ivy Leagues were initially church. When Newton found out about gravity, he was not studying science, he was studying the Bible. That's Oxford and Cambridge. Okay? You see, after the church, everything got democratized, including education and science. And so we should never separate ourselves from science. And that's why my background is in neuroscience, simply because you should never separate science and church, because the church started off science because they studied nature. You understand that? Okay? So it is important to understand, once the church came, there were hospitals everywhere. In our parts of the world, we started the first hospital in the world. But it wasn't democratized. Because in our parts of the world, the doctrine is different. The Eastern philosophy is different. If a man is suffering on the road, you go up to the man suffering on the road and say, wow, look at this guy, he's suffering on the road. And he's like, yes, this is because of his previous sins and his mistakes. And therefore, in his previous lifetime, today he's paying for it. But when Christianity came in, so they might have the hospital, but they won't take him. Not because they're wicked, please understand. It's not wickedness. It's just the way the man is paying for his previous lives. Now, that's not such a bad doctrine in context to the Jewish paradigm, because we pay for our father's sins to the third and fourth generation. That's really in the Bible. So don't make a mistake. It's not wrong. It's just that there's nothing you can do about it, because we are paying for the sins of our fathers. I'm getting somewhere, so hold on. You see, therefore, what is passed down in iniquity will be suffered by the generations that come after. Watch this. A Christian walks to this man, and he's got a different perspective. So 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, 1,000 with the Protestant Reformation, 2,000 with Jesus coming, they had a different understanding. They would say, they look at this man, and they would come and believe that this man could be redeemed even from the grave. So when the church came to our parts of the world, the church came into the mission fields with teaching them English, with teaching them nursing, with teaching them hospitals, with teaching them, with getting them education. Because the one thing the church is supposed to believe in is the salvation not of heaven, but the salvation and redemption of their lives, and so that heaven will come down to earth. And so Augustine taught two aspects. He wrote about the city of God and the city of man. And the city of God was starting from the church. So when you set up a church, the justification of a church is because it brings in a heavenly perspective. It meddles with destiny. And it changes the trajectory of your hopelessness. And it raises you from the dead and tells you that your story is meaningful and that you can have life again, no matter how broken you are. The church synthesizes the pains and the sufferings of people. And it says, this is why you suffered. And it tells you the good news that from now onwards, you'll be born from above and things will be different. The church meddles with destiny and has the power to redeem even from the grave. And so when the church has lost its way. Because you have different ministries, like worship ministries. Don't get angry with me. Okay? Don't get upset with me. And you have different ministries like prophetic ministries. Like, what's your ministry? It's a prophetic ministry. man, you come to Sri Lanka, you will prophesy.
That's right.
When the government picks the phone up, and when people in government say, hey, you know what, I'm going through something. Now, I heard they call you a prophet. Please tell me what I'm going through. I'll give you 3 days, and the phone goes down. Okay? And they have the power to speak to someone and close your church down, or scandalize you, or put you in prison. Many times, I've left the country because they were about to put me in prison. Many times, our life has been in jeopardy. When that happens, you prophesy, man. You don't have a prophetic ministry. You don't have a prophetic ministry. The prophetic is normal. You live through it. If God doesn't talk, you are finished. God has to talk. We have no concept that God keeps silent. God keeps silent. When we cry out to Him and call out to Him, He answers quickly and swiftly, and He saves us from every disaster. I was investigated 3 times. When I was investigated 3 times to have my ministry, a guy who was putting a camera from the intelligence unit into my church to check where the gemstones are coming from, where the signs and wonders are coming from, where the gold dust is coming from, how is this guy understanding this stuff, where is the miracles coming from, how are the phones getting charged, how is money being transferred into accounts. When they started putting this thing into my roof, he fell from my roof and died in my church, in my hall, in a hall like this. Wow. You see, when you are in jeopardy, you prophesy. When you are in jeopardy, you will have miracles. You have to be in the lion's den for the lion's mouth to be shut. You have to have the Goliath to be able to throw 5 stones. America, the Western church, my dear friends, you who came to our parts of the world and built us up, I'm sorry for you. But coming are the colors. It's a horse racing proverb. Coming are the colors into this nation, that you will have to stand again. You will have to prophesy again. You will have to hear from God again. You will have to take what is fringe and make it your core. Immortality and this doctrine, which you'll hear a history of it today, will not become something of just knowledge. It will be something that you will have to wear and believe and walking every day. Incorruptibility and deathlessness will be something that you need to believe, because when a bullet is flying at you and someone is trying to kill you, you would need to believe. It won't be an option. And I'm not prophesying war to you, but I'm saying doctrines are easier to believe in our parts of the world. We don't have options like you. Now, let me show you something. In Paul's theology on suffering, that will be very, very important for you to understand immortality. I'm telling you a story of immortality. Okay? Now, Paul talks about it like this in Colossians, and he explains it beautifully and wonderfully. I'm talking of immortality, guys. This is a church that writes a book called Deathlessness. Okay? We started tracking this thing 15, 17 years ago. And I would come home, I'd partied for 2 nights, I'd taken a lot of cocaine and a lot of ecstasy, and I was up and I couldn't sleep. And right there in a Buddhist country, now this is not a trip, but this really happened, because this went on for a couple of days, even when I was sober. Right in a Buddhist country, where we have TV channels like ITN and Rupavahini, and we have no CNN or anything like that, and this is 17 years ago, I'm flicking through the channels, and I see a guy talking about mantles. And he's throwing up cloths into the air like this. And he says, mantles will fall. And when they fall on you, your life is changed. And I watch him, and he lays hands on the sick, and he raises the dead. And I don't know who he is, and all I remember that his name was Prophet Kobus. And something inside of me, because at that time there would have been a lot of things inside of me, but this one thing that is inside of me that was right, okay? cried out at that moment because Fiona was in the room and said, Fiona, come, watch this guy. One day, I'm going to be like this.
Come on.
Okay? After that, the next day, flickering to the TV, flickering was the same channel. Flickering again the next day for the same channel. It went on for about a week, and after that, gone. Never saw it again. Tried to find it, what the heck was it? It wasn't God TV. It was Spirit Word channel that was coming from Kirby Fiona De Lanerolle. But it was showing up on my TV in Sri Lanka. It's impossible. Okay? At that point of time, life went on. I lived my normal life and continued in partying, making a lot of money, okay, to be able to print the lottery tickets. At my age, I was 19, 20 years old. You have to be somebody, trust me. I mean, in this country, you understand horses are owned by the mafia, lotteries, I'm sure you have some sort of background, or some sort of understanding. It's not easy to start printing the tickets if you are not somebody. By 20, I'm made. I'm a made man. Okay, I don't know whether you know the term. Okay? So by 20, I'm made, I'm violent, I'm aggressive, I'm powerful. I walk around with 10 guys, all packing, okay? Most of the guys have gangster names. Some names are like in Sinhalese, like the guy who chops necks off. Right? Those are the names, okay? Because those are the deeds, okay? So I walk around with this. I've seen this video, but really at that point of time, a voice spoke, and that's it. So I remember it distinctly. And after that, I look back at my life, and I'll tell you, certain things happened to me that were completely unjust that I didn't realize, and I started realizing much later on when I started coming to church. But I realized when I look back at my life, what had gone wrong and what made me who I was, and why I was doing what I was doing. And I'm going to tell you a bit of that, but I'm going to read Colossians to you to show you something. And right here in Colossians is a wonderful story. And the story in Colossians, Paul is talking about his life, okay? Now, I'm nowhere like Paul, please understand. And I never got whipped, and I never got shipwrecked. But this is Paul's story. But he talks about what he went through in a particular way. And this is what he says, verse 24. He says, now I rejoice in my sufferings. Verse 24, Colossians 1, verse 24. He says, now I rejoice in my sufferings for you, and I fill up in my flesh what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ for the sake of his body, which is the church, of which I became a minister according to the stewardship from God, which was given to me for you to fulfill the word of God. So he says that the sufferings and the whippings that he has gone through, at one point he boasts about how many whippings that he's had. He in fact says that the whippings were much more than Jesus' whippings. He says he's been shipwrecked, he's been robbed, he's been betrayed. You know, you remember the story? And you constantly see that Paul is boasting about his sufferings. And we don't understand why, because till we get to the understanding of supererogation, you will never understand why Paul is speaking like this. Because he's talking about that his sufferings can somehow add to the sufferings of Christ. And that sounds like blasphemy if you don't understand the doctrine of supererogation and if you don't understand the church. Because he's saying, look, what I have done has now added to what was lacking.
Come on.
Those are the words he's using. What was lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Who could even think that there was something lacking in the sufferings of Christ? Would we even speak that there was something lacking in the sufferings of Christ? We wouldn't even speak like that today in the church.
That's right.
Why? Because we don't know. We don't know what we can do with this type of thing. And so, Paul talks about this because he's saying that every time he's suffering for the sake of the body. Now, if I can get that, maybe when I take communion today, I can discern the body in a completely different way, and many of us will get healed and not sleep. Many of us are dying of cancers and sicknesses and diseases. Today you can get healed if you discern right now what he's saying.
Come on.
Maybe some of you can get rich, successful. Maybe your businesses will prosper and the contracts that were not coming can come to you. If you discern exactly what he's saying. Because he's saying he's doing it for you.
Right.
A generation that is coming 2,000 years later. Paul is saying, I'm doing it for you.
Come on.
And we think that, oh, no, it's only Christ. But my friends, I'm saying that the foundation stone, the head is Yeshua, who died for you, But is it prophesied that God will set up a system, that system will become like a treasury, a bank, that so when people start coming into it, they will be able to draw overdrafts from the deposits of the pains and the sufferings of the Christians. If you're a Christian, my friend, you stand on the blood of martyrs. What does it mean? Why I could do what I did in Sri Lanka and no one else couldn't do it. AOG has been there. Come on. The Foursquare has been there. Come on. Yeah. Foursquare has been there. All your churches have been there. There was a church that came and set up there just recently. Big church, big name, big name. The pastor came in there. They set up there 2 churches at the same time simultaneously. Came to Sri Lanka. Okay, this is the field of labor. Matthew 20. They came big, massive. They think they can walk in there? And they say, we'll come, we'll do our spiritual warfare, we'll put the devil under our feet. And then we're going to walk in there and we're going to make sure that everyone is Christianized. One guy came, this was just recently, within the first 6 months, he got cancer. I'm trying to show you something. Okay, foreign churches. Second guy came, pastor was 35 years old. By the time he was 36, she died. Cancer. This is a story of missionaries. Wherever you go, you realize that as you step into new land, that everything, every load that needs to come upon someone will come. Donald Trump walks down the ramp, okay, that beautiful golden, escalator. You remember the story? And he says, I'm going to become the president of the United States. Everything he needs to become a president from a businessman will come upon his life in 1 year. What would take another guy 20 years of work, now because of his intention, the load will come upon him in 1 year so that his character will develop so he can sit on that seat again. Come on. You see, everything in life, it's science today. And I'll explain a bit of science. If you have an intention, a lot of pastors say this, they say, we're going to save the whole block. Okay, or the 10 blocks. Or you go into a new city and say, I'm going to save this city. And this city is going to know Jesus. And you've not understood the field. You've not understood the history. You've not understood what has already been set up for you. You never plugged in to the Father's work. Come on, man. And you try and do something. What will come on you is the load, because you're saying, I'm going to lift 1,000 kilos, and immediately, without any muscle, you'll be given 1,000 kilos, and Jesus will say, God will say, yes, please. You want 1,000 kilos, you want the block, you want the city, you want the nation? Here. Ask, and it shall be given to you. But if your character, if your muscles are not developed, you will get the load, but you won't be able to handle the load because the pressure will be too much. But what happens if you're standing on the foundation stones? A foolish man doesn't build his house on a rock. A foolish man forgets about the rock. On this rock, I shall establish my church. Natasha and Mark were here. Mark was telling me yesterday, they were telling me the story, that when the Catholic Pope stands to preach, at the bottom of where he preaches, right down at the bottom, is St. Peter's tomb. And he preaches his message right from the place. Right at the bottom is St. Peter's tomb. On a relic. The Catholic Church, my dear friends, whether you like it or not, some of you might be Catholics, in less than 1,000 years, in fact 400 years, it was the Eastern Orthodox and then Catholic, but I won't go into the details of that. They received and achieved everything that Jesus prophesied. Their leaders appointed kings to nations. Every nation on the earth knew and was preached, Christ was preached to the corners of the earth. Why? Because, my friend, they had something at that time before things got corrupted, before the institutionalization got in. They had something, a doctrine that they knew that they stand on. Okay, very, very important. So we think, oh, you know what? They preach in Latin maybe because they want to control us. And they don't want us to know. Okay, watch how the mythology starts and how we throw away the baby in the bathwater in the Protestant Reformation. And we think, oh my God, they work only to order. The way the Catholic Church works is they have a more open sacrament than the Eastern Orthodox. The Eastern Orthodox have an absolutely closed sacrament. Closed sacrament means the 7 sacraments, that is baptism, laying on of hands, ordination, all this kind of stuff, or communion. The Eastern Orthodox do not allow it to be given. Remember this conference, this last one is called Rechurch. Do not allow it to be given by anyone else except the order.
That's right.
The Catholics are more lenient. They have open sacrament. The Catholics even believe that if a heretic baptizes someone, they still accept the baptism. The Eastern Orthodox will never do it. Is it control? Or do they know something? And if you were here for the last couple of days, you'll understand that the Spirit is poured down and we need earthen vessels to catch it. Apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers. And therefore, when a water is pouring down, if you understand this simply, if there's a pressure coming, if there's a water coming, and if you can embank it, if you can reservoir it, you can create electricity. There's water in the air here now, but you can do nothing about it. There's electricity in the air here now, you can't do anything about it. But if you put a conductor and you put wires, although you reduce the power, in the down, it becomes much more effective.
Come on.
The church is a filtering process. The power of God is here now. But without an earthen vessel, and not just any earthen vessel, the nervous system has to be set up. It has to be irrogated. It has to have gone through something. My captivity has to be taken captive. It doesn't become a gift to you unless my captivity is taken captive. My addictions were broken. My marriages were healed. My violence was subdued to peace. The hands that beat people to pulp now praise for healing. Yes, I have healings. I have healings because it's a filtering process of an earthen vessel. And therefore, it's when a pressure of water comes, if you put it into a smaller hose, you're going to get more pressure. You know how it works. And therefore, you need to filter it. And so the Catholics or the old dioceses, they don't have, please understand, they don't have the order, and it's not an open sacrament just for one thing, so they can contain the power. So it is only the lineage of the order that can lay hands. That's so necessary. It is so necessary. Because the apostle is the guy who will go in and he gets the battering. The apostolos is a navy ship that goes in to a nation. And when it's going in, it gets hit, beaten, but it has the power to take it. And it goes through and breaks through the barriers. And it goes there and it goes in with the people who can set up the civilization. And then because he's broken through, the others can come through because he's taken all the beating, man. Now there's no more beating for me, or there's lesser beating for me because this guy's gone in. It's a navy vessel that goes to battle. But just imagine you go to a place and you set up a church like those guys did. No apostles. No one has walked the ground. No one has walked the ground there. Of course, the young pastor, 35 years old, set on a mission field without no understanding of any of this stuff. In a charismatic Pentecostal revival, told people, oh, don't worry, it's just, oh, you come here, kneel down, I'll ordain you. Go. Are you crazy? You sitting in Sri Lanka? All hell will break loose on him now because you've given him a nation to win. And there's no apostle. And so he goes in there, he's young. The pressure, when he comes in there, he says the tangible presence of the demonic is real. Why? Because he's gone in, he has no covering. And he goes in there and naturally he takes the pressure of 1,000 generations on one man. Gone. What you do is you set up a structure.
Come on.
You set up a structure, man. A man without a church is open to the elements. A man without a covering, and not just any covering, this type of covering, is open to the elements. Why, when someone comes through that door, and they come to church, and their life is in chaos, it falls into order, because this place has an ordination. An ordination. The greatest faith that Jesus talks about is the faith of a centurion. Who's a centurion? He says simply, I will not come, you don't need to come under my house. I will come under your house. I am the Roman Empire, but I realize that my servant who's under my house, in my house, under my stewardship, is sick and cannot be healed. And obviously the best doctors have worked on him. He's a centurion servant. But he says, I need to come into a new house. I need to come into a new submission. Submission is not a bad word. You submit to someone. Yep. And it's the most beautiful thing because you say, I can't. I've realized. And say, I need something bigger to cover me. And then you come into that house, you sit in that house, and that's what the centurion did. And Jesus looks at him and says, I have not seen this type of faith anywhere else. This is really faith. This is great faith. What is great faith? This. Orders. Orders, ordinations. He says, if you tell me to come, I'll come. If you tell me to go, I'll go. I know what it is to tell people, come and go. Brother, he came under order and rank for the Spirit. He says, a house divided will break and fall. You're not fighting against the devil, my friend. Get thee behind me is not a fight. Get thee behind me is an order of a rank. The apostolate goes forward. You come follow me. Who are you telling this to? The devil. You're not fighting your pets at home. You put them on a chain and you drag them alongside of you and say, heal. When Jesus spoke about that, he uses this one sentiment. The one sentiment he uses is, he says, what happens if the finger of God has come upon you? What happens if it's the finger of God? What does he mean? Where does this statement first come through? This first statement comes through, who knows where it comes from? It comes from right back to Exodus. Yes, it was written by the finger of God, but before that, it comes from the magicians of Pharaoh. The magicians of Pharaoh, after the third miracle, okay, and the miracle of what? Beelzebub, flies. And that was the accusation of Jesus when he told the story about the house divided. Beelzebub, this is done by Beelzebub. Remember? Yeah. The third miracle and the fourth miracle were Beelzebub. Who is Beelzebub? The Lord of the flies. And so therefore, Egypt was attacked by flies and bugs. And then after the third one, no more could the sorcerers do the same thing. Okay. What did they say? They came up to Pharaoh and said, Pharaoh, there's a big problem here. This guy is doing this from the finger of God. Did you just get that? What does it mean? Who do you think Moses was invoking when he took that wand or staff or whatever you want to call it? That's where all the movies get it from. Get it from us. Yeah. They got smaller sticks. We got big ones. When he waved that, who do you think he was invoking? Who was the snake? Your God? So your God comes in a snake? He had the power to bring into rank their gods. So when they came with the snake god, and he said, here's my snake god. And he said, my snake god is going to destroy you. He's like, your snake god and I are friends. I know this guy. He said, that guy, you'll see who he works for. You see, Kobus told me a long time ago, he said, Kirby, he said, you are a son of God, you're a servant of man, and you are the master of the devil. So when they're bringing in theirs, he says, oh, you know what, show them who's boss. When they bring the other guy, and then they say, go back to Pharaoh and say, Pharaoh, our gods are fighting against us. The greatest amount of faith is to understand rank and file, to understand order. If you can't discern the body and discern order, there's a measure given to every single man. Right. If you can't discern the measure, my friend, you're in trouble. There's a measure given to every single man. And that doesn't mean no anyone is boss over you. Please understand that. Pastor is not a boss over you. He's your friend given to you so that he can mature you into perfection. That means you into your fullness of your sonship, you become the fullness. You become the one who becomes the 11th hour worker when you come to his life. You get everything he's worked for. Every pain he's gone through. You don't have to go through it. It's discerning the body. It's an order so that people can have breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And so then we all come in as living stones on the apostles' doctrines and on their foundations. And we each bring into the treasury our pain, our suffering, our experience. And we each plug it in. And the church is a synthesizing system that takes the suffering of men and balances it out and passes it down to heathens who walk through the door for free. Because they will never live a holy life like you live. They will never live a righteous life like you live. They don't know. They just walk through the door. But they will have the same miracles that you have. And they will walk through the door and say, man, I just came to church. You know, I'm still drinking. I've still got my addictions. I've still got this. I'm still not right with my wife. But man, I'll tell you, my job, that interview, I got promoted. How does it happen? Did it happen to you? Yes, it happened to you. Why is it happening to them? Because it happened to you. You bring who you are to church, and I don't care who you are and how insignificant you think you are, but your pain matters to us. The ordination can take your pain and make it someone's blessing. Your pain is given meaning and trajectory, my friend. 1 Corinthians 4. You see, 1 Corinthians 4, it says it like this. It's beautiful. We're going to take communion today. It's going to be awesome. You guys are awesome. Very cool. You see, I look back at my life, and I realized that something really strange happened to me. I was 14 years old. I was not a bad kid, okay? My parents were Methodists at that point. I was 14 years old, 15 years old, yeah, maybe 15, and getting a bit wayward, you know, smoking a joint in the bathroom of school. You know, once I don't like joints, I did a little more worse than a joint, let's put it like that, okay, in the bathroom in school, getting into that kind of stuff. Getting a bit wayward. And at one point, we were having a party. And in this party, I told my friend, who was in my other class, I was trying to actually reconcile and bridge the gap between two races. Because in our country, there's a war between two races for 30 years before. And so this guy was of the other class. And he was the leader of the other class. So I told him to come for a party. And they came to, he said, okay, sure, I'll come for the party, but this is all my class now. And now I'm like quite a guy in my class, I'm a leader, okay? Tough guy. At 15, you look at me in the wrong way, probably get punched. It was, in our school, we're rough, okay? And the rough guys win, okay? And so, at that point of time, this guy says, I'll come for the party. I'm expecting him to come at 6 o'clock. And this is what happens. Are you ready for this? Are you sure? No, they're not. These guys are not ready. I'll try this side. I'll try this side. This side is better. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a story. Are you ready for this? Yes. You're sure? Okay, all right, okay, good. Because trust me, you have to be ready for this. You have to be ready for this. I was getting on with my life. Now I'm looking back from the time I won the lottery's tender to print all tickets. I'm a gangster. And I'm looking at my life and saying, what happened? How did this happen to me? I'm getting to know Jesus because by now my parents are praying for me every day. My mother's prayers have been heard by heaven. And Jesus is encountering me, a gangster who's walking around violently, packing, very rich, young guy, made it. And my mother's prayers are invoking heaven on my behalf. Yes. And then I look back at my life and say, something happened to me. When did this happen? How did this happen to me? And it tracks back to my life and back to this party of what happened to me. And I'm waiting for my friend to come, but he didn't come. Instead, we get a phone call. And this is what happened. This guy goes home. He was the son of a brigadier in the armed forces. Something comes upon him. He takes a knife. He cuts his mother into 14 pieces. He takes the gun. He shoots his father, shoots his mother. And then he puts the AK-47 at the back seat of his car. And he puts the 6 cans of beer that he promised to buy for me in the back seat of his car. And then he drives to meet me, but he first decides to pick up one of my friends. And he drives to my friend's house. Says, hey, come on, we're going to meet Kirby. He puts him in the car. And now he's coming to meet me. Thank God the police got him before. The next day at school, I get arrested at school. Because when the police got me, when the police got him, they asked him a question. And supposedly, his response was, I am in a satanist cult. And my parents were sacrificed. And the orders were given by Kirby De Lanerolle. I was 15 years old. I came in every single paper in Sri Lanka. From 16, I come from a very good family. Very good family. I had horses, I grew up rich, had money. From 16 years old, all my friends, even right now, they're in government, they're ministers of defense, they're all that. At 16, my friends couldn't hang out with me. If I walked into a place in Colombo, the place would just go, it's gone. When they say the name Kirby, it puts dread into people's souls because he was the cult leader that can hypnotize someone and everyone can start a killing spree. I was 16 years old. At 16, I left because I had no friends. I left my mom's house and I went and stayed in an area called the Hood. And I became a gangster. And everything they said about me became me. Yeah. And the scandal, so that's why I'm careful of scandal, of my life. Every word was framed. And I became that very person that they believed I was, which I was not in the beginning. And now, when I had made it, still violent, aggressive, broken, hurt, I'm thinking about my life. And I'm thinking about God. And at that point of time, I had an experience with Jesus. Not a church. I wish it was a church. There was no church that could give me that experience. Because they all wanted trophies. They wanted Kirby De Lanerolle, because if we get Kirby De Lanerolle, then they're a church. They made it. They put me on a testimony, and they get me to tell the story. But I met the Lord. And he came to me. And once he came to me, my life started changing in a very powerful way. And he called me back into the church, which is my name, Kirby. And he called me with a protocol, with a blueprint. And he told me about Reformation. And he told me that my life had to be what it is for a reason. And he told me about my forefathers that have worked the field in Sri Lanka. And so it was I who started then saying, I will preach the gospel because God has saved me. The first day I met Jesus was the first day I said, I'll preach the gospel. I was a business person. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to say, let me check about it. When I met him, I said, I'm going to preach you from the mountaintops. And I preached the word at that point of time, and I came into the charismatic revival. When I came into charismatic revival, I met my spiritual father, who was an awesome man of God, but he loved grace so much that he preached grace to such an extent that he would disintegrate the institution itself. And therefore, Neil Obesekran, who's my spiritual dad, preached grace in such a way that he didn't like titles or he didn't like orders because he was hurt. He was a Methodist priest before. And he preached it to me, and so I got free. He preached grace so much that you ask the question, can I go and sin now? And that's the way you need to preach grace, because you need to be able to tell them, no, you can't sin, certainly not. And that was my spiritual dad. But more and more and more, I started remembering this guy I'd seen on TV. It's like, Pastor Neil, we need to go and see this guy. All I know, it was Prophet Kobus, and the internet had come alive at that point. I checked him out. I said, Pastor Neil, he's in South Africa. We need to go. He was a very protective pastor. He said, son, these guys are all weird guys. You shouldn't go into Africa and finding these prophets, And he was very protective. He said, what you're doing is good. We're getting somewhere. I said, Pastor Neil, we have to go. This guy's a prophet. You're a pastor. And he's like, no, but son, these ordinations really don't matter. Don't worry about all that. We are in grace now. And it was good advice for a legalistic guy. Somehow, somewhere, I knew I needed to fast. I was still on drugs. I was still smoking, still drinking at that point. So somewhere I started fasting. Pastor Neil would tell me. I did everything under submission, but nothing that he told me to do. I don't know whether you understand the relationship. I told Pastor Neil, I feel like fasting because I'm still, I'm still addicted to certain things. He's like, no, son, don't worry about fasting. Don't get into works and performance, son. Grace is grace. You get it on your own. And he was right.
Come on.
The doctrine is good. And so therefore, I started fasting. And every time I fasting, I was so thin. And I fasted that for 5 years. And every time he'll tell me, son, you're performing. You don't need to do this. God is good. The doctrine is that you don't need to have any kind of type of works. And the doctrine is absolutely right. There's nothing wrong in that. But Kirby De Lanerolle needed to do something. It was me, and it was not the doctrine. I knew me. I knew what I needed to do. I knew what my hands had done. I knew what needs to happen so that I felt what can happen in the future. I said, Pastor, I need the church to be glorified like before. I need to make an impression in Sri Lanka. I need to be able to bring people to church again. And Pastor Neil blessed everything I did. Reluctantly, but I never went without his blessing. Wow. The first day he told me, when he heard immortality, he said, don't use the word immortality. Next time I said Breatharian, he said, don't use the word Breatharian. Next time I said, very mature, I said, I'm a prophet to the world. He said, no, you're not.
Come on.
You're a prophet to just a community, church. Son, don't get ahead of yourself.
Come on.
You're restricted.
Yeah.
Restricted.
Come on.
Restricted.
So good.
And restricted. And I listened for a little while. For a little while, for 1-2 years, I never used the word. For 1-2 years, I didn't, and that paid off, and paid off, and paid off. And in the restriction was a birthing. In the restriction and the constriction was an increasing. In the hiding was the fame that is accounting. And that's what a pastor does. He puts borders and parameters. He makes sure that gushing water will be filtered and come into a pressure hose for a time. And every word I taught as gold, though I was a rebel and never listened. But I would listen for a time, and that was more than enough because it was grace.
Yeah, come on.
I just need to understand what submission was. Yes. And finally, he took me to South Africa after many years of asking and pestering. And in fact, he tried to take me to another ministry, Chris Oyakhilimo's ministry. And he went there first. He said, come, forget about this Kobus guy, you come here. And even that, he tried to divert me. I said, please, Pastor Neil, please come. I need to know this man. And then he came with me. And he met Kobus. When he met Kobus, he said, son, this guy looks like Jesus.
Come on.
My pastor submitted to Kobus van Rensburg.
Come on.
And after that, from there came from the office came an outpouring, channeled, filtered, captivity taken captive, and gifts given to men. Kobus was suffering of cancer, dying of cancer, 6 times dead. But he would raise the dead, dying of cancer, laying hands. And then everyone would say, how is this dying man healing the sick? Exactly. He's collecting in his body the sufferings to connect it back to the head. So that Kirby De Lanerolle can one day walk out and not suffer ever again from cancer. Because I have connected it, synthesized, I've plugged myself into a line of a prophet. And therefore now I don't have to do the work. I can lay my hands on the sick and get healed just like him. Come on. One thing prophet asked me when I met him, what do you want? I said, I only want one thing. Because signs, wonders, miracles. Oral Roberts said that he had more signs and wonders and miracles and healings than the whole 1946 revival put together. That is Jack Coe, Allen, you name it. Wow. When he said, what do you want? Everyone said, lay your hands for healing. I said, lay your hands that I'll have the revelation of the word. Yeah. Wow, that's all I want. So that's all he did. He laid his hands and he said, tomorrow you're preaching to 5,000 people. Didn't know me from Adam. Or maybe he did. And then he put me on stage in front of 5,000 people. I had 30 people in my church. 5,000 people. And then he took his shirt off at the pool where he stands and said, Kirby, come here. He took his shirt off. He said, put it on me. And then I remember what I saw. Mantles will fall. Come on. And he put his shirt on. And I walked around with Kobus' shirt, with 5,000 people walking around with massive shirt. He's tall, 6 foot something. Yeah. Walking around with a massive shirt and everyone was like, wow, he's never done this. He's never done this. He's never done this. Yeah. And I'm walking like, wow. This is what I saw when I was on drugs. Come on. God penetrated all that to get me a vision in Sri Lanka. Come on. And I come back with a prophetic unction, seeing, hearing, revelations open up to me because I honored the prophet and got a prophet's reward. Come on. Yes. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what happened in my life. Neil loved it. Neve loved him. But still, Prophet Kobus was sick. The first day that Fiona went and sat with Prophet Kobus, she saw a vision. She's a prophet. And she saw a vision, and the vision was that Kobus was on an instrument, and he had pipes coming out of him in different ways, and all the revelations, each pipe that was a blood transfusion had a certain revelation. But one was loose and had fallen. And she looked at it, and Kobus was the one who brought immortality like never before to the world after Paul. Right. You must understand. Yeah, that's right. And then she saw this one pipe loose. And she looked at the pipe and she realized that pipe said immortality. Oh. And then from the first time I met Kobus, I remembered the dream. And I said, there's something missing, something missing, something missing. Something missing. He's got it, but there's something missing. And so we started now asking the Lord, why isn't he getting healed? And Kobus would be raised from there, but still not healed. And then we started looking at what was missing. And please understand, I honor him and I love him and I receive from him and I'm walking in him and through him and from him. You see? But what happened was, I was wondering what is missing, what is missing. And then he dies. At his funeral, I'm the one who said the prayer. The first conference after that, I'm the one who was invited to do the conference instead of him. But something was missing. And the question was, why did Kobus die? Healing thousands of people, but he couldn't heal himself. After Kobus died, all the people around him died. Young people, 35, 40, 60. Then people started preaching immortality after that. My friend, Darren Bigley, he died. And he caused Fiona and I to think something's missing. Something's missing, something's missing. And then, at that point, I took Pastor Neil again. Because Pastor Neil got very sick. 7 blocks in his heart. Something's missing. And I take Pastor Neil before he got it. But anyway, I took him. And I said, Pastor, this thing called irrigation, you need to look at it. You need to understand supererogation. We're missing something. We're missing something. And I took Pastor Neil and I took him to a guy in India, Bishop Paul T. Maran. He's an Episcopal bishop. He wears a collar and he wears a garb. And I said, look at the Episcopal structure. They've done science on this. Now, here's science. They've done science. You can search it online. Bishops of the Catholic Church and their priests live longer than any other man. It's there. It's science. And the congregation. And the congregation, which is very sad. The congregation at least should be living. It's science. It's neuroscience. And then I studied something called cognitive baseline theory. And cognitive baseline theory says that human beings naturally share load. You can't help it. If you come into a place, when you look at the crowd, when you look at the people, you see the informational support, you see the structural support, you see the emotional support, you naturally come into a room and your nervous system relaxes because like, I can breathe, I can share the load. And they say that if it's known as something called the anterior cingulate cortex that is inside your brain. And the anterior cingulate cortex resources fuel for your body. And if you see a mountain or if you see a field and you have to clean it up, the anterior cingulate cortex says you need so much energy. And therefore, if you're just one man alone, this is just science now. This is the science of church. It says that the anterior cingulate cortex will start making you hungry for cookies and burgers and donuts. Because you're alone. It happened in COVID. Because he thinks you have to climb the mountain alone and clean the field alone. But the anterior cingulate cortex in quantum seconds knows if there's an expert in the room. Come on, man. In the anterior cingulate cortex in a quantum second knows if someone has already gone through it. It's inclined for mentorship. This is science now. And so, when people come into my church, they'll say they put on a bit of weight, after 3 months they've lost weight. And I know we have weight loss miracles. But the fact of the matter is, they change their diet. They start losing weight. And I say, what's happening? I say, you're feeling safe again.
Come on.
And if your nervous system feels safe again, your defenses go down. And if your defenses go down, your emotions change. And if your emotions change, your mind changes. And if your mind changes, my friend, your environment changes. And the church gives people the safety because it is structured under apostles and prophets and pastors and teachers and evangelists and people who have taken the Lord for you. And therefore, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 4, and you can turn it with me. 1 Corinthians 4 says it like this. You're going to love communion today. And this is what 1 Corinthians 4 says. You are already full. This is verse 8. You're already rich. You have reigned as kings without us. And indeed, I could wish you did reign, for we also might reign with you. For I think that God has displayed us, the apostles, he said. You want to be an 11th hour worker? You want to be able to come to the field and get what people have worked for? That was Kirby De Lanerolle. I was an 11th hour worker. I understood this stuff. I went looking for the right type. Here's a guy with a garb and he looks like the last thing a free church would go and submit to. Neil, my father, was like, son, forget about this. This guy's with a collar, he's got a garb. I said, Pastor Neil, just check this out. Check this out. We need this. He goes, he sees this guy. He's like, and this guy tells me something really interesting. When he took me, I was breatharian. That means I've gone into 0 point energy. I'm not eating, I'm fasting most of the time. In my part of the world, we call it that. You can call it fasting, in India, whatever you want to call it. I'm fasting all the time because I thought I need to fast. I'm carrying something. I need to fast. I never seen a man who fasts who get it wrong. I'm just trying to tell you. You don't have to fast. You don't need to work. But I'm just trying to tell you. And I'm fasting. I'm thin. He's saying, why do you need to do this? I said, I don't still feel safe. My name is Kirby. I'm brought from the church. I might know something. I was born for this. You don't know my life. You don't know what happened to me. So many years later, I meet my friend who was arrested. I asked him why he told what he said to the police, because I had nothing to do with it. He told me something really interesting, which I'll share. Remind me to share that, yeah? Because I can forget. And this is what it says. For I thank God, so he says this, and indeed I could wish you did reign, that we also might reign with you. For I think that God has displayed us, the apostles. Listen carefully. Paul is saying, I think God displayed us, the apostles, last men condemned to death. Wow. You see, he knew the apostles were born to die.
Come on.
For you. They were appointed, ordained by God. You want to be a 11th hour worker? You want to get the payment that people work for years? I came onto the scene where all the churches have been. And I came after this bishop. And he said, I want to ordain you on your 40th birthday. You will take my mantle to Sri Lanka. And suddenly, from one church that all the other churches said, it's a cult on a corner. It's a diminishing move. Little church that I had, I went and submitted. Okay, to somebody called Apostle. And then what happened was, if I can have that scripture up here, we're going back there. When I did that, Pastor Neil came, he submitted as well. This is what you call a real spiritual father.
Come on.
Protective, but humble. And this is what happened. So I submitted to this guy. And once I submitted to him, he says like this, we are men appointed for death. The last worker in the field is the one who gets the payment that everyone else has done. Don't you want to do that? Abe, don't you want it to be free and of rest for you? Don't you want to see the work that has been done and quantified and audited for generations to come in you in one moment of time?
Come on.
If you discern the body, what would happen? I discerned the body. It was very hard because these guys are looking different. And I'm not telling you to go to some old diocese and submit yourself. Please understand, I looked at his life. I understand he's irrigated. I understand that he was serving the free churches. I understand that he had fought a court case for 17 years against the Indian government for the sake of the free churches like me and you.
Come on.
And I saw that what he had done was now he won the case. And 11,000 churches came to him after 17 years. Because he was the only one who got a license in India to start a church. In our countries, you can't start a church. You need a license. That's how they persecute you. And suddenly, when he agreed, he told me something strange. He said, I was waiting for someone like you. Because he heard about the doctrine of immortality. Yeah. He heard about immortality. He came and listened to the doctrine of immortality. He said, this is right. This is what he called the end days. He said, this is the doctrine for the end days. This is the doctrine for the end days. This is what he said. Immortality. And he said, I like this. 60 bishops that he had under him said they'll leave him. He said, it doesn't matter. I will ordain this guy. Yeah. I will ordain this guy. He came to Sri Lanka, ordained me. The president of the country came for my ordination. A Buddhist president.
Wow.
Why? The apostle.
Come on.
In one day, I went from one church to 300 churches. In 9 months, I went to 600 churches.
Come on.
Yes. Just because I understood what Jesus called the greatest amount of faith.
Come on. It's good.
Just one thing. And great things happen. Here it is. Let's read. For I think that God has displayed us the apostles, verse 9. Last men condemned to death. For we have been made a spectacle to the world, both to angels, demons, those are the guys who are blocking you, and men. Do you see there? We are fools for Christ's sake, but you are wise. 11th hour workers, you are wise. We are fools, but you are wise. That's what he says here. We are weak, but you are strong. You are distinguished, but we are dishonored. To the present hour, we both hunger and thirst. We are poorly clothed and beaten and homeless, and we labor, working with our own hands, being reviled, we bless, being persecuted, we endure, being defamed, we entreat. We have been made the filth of the world and an offering of scourging of all things until now. Who is he doing it for? The body.
Come on.
Come on, man. Jesus goes to a well. We'll close with this. I think the word is enough. I won't be prophesying or anything else. We're going to break communion. We're going to break communion. I'm going to show a video, and we'll break communion. And therefore, Jesus goes to the well, and the woman tells him, Sir, this well is deep. How are you going to access this water? It's far away from you. It's down the line. He says, woman, the thing is, if you know who I am and who the gift is, not the work, You will ask me, and when I sit on the well of the church, the well is where people come because they're tired. They want to be refreshed. They want to be renewed. They want to drink. She talks about it as the temple. She says, the Jews go to temple. We worship on this mountain. He sat at the church, the well, the of refreshing. And he says, everything. He said, this is the well of Jacob. Your forefathers, Jesus. This is your well, our well. How are you going to access this water? He says, woman, you come here every single day. You come to church every day, huh? You come on Sunday, you come on Wednesday, you come on Tuesday. You all are faithful, you come in for years. Have you accessed the well? What is the well you're accessing? Your father's wells. What is the well you're accessing? His wells. Deep wells. What is the well you're accessing? You're accessing Paul's wells. Elijah's wells. Jesus' wells. Deep wells. But if you have to access it in any other way, it's deep. You'll have to draw. It's so low down. It's so far away. You'll have to come every single day and you'll maybe get a little dribble. In the old thing. But as I went and submitted under Paul T. Maran, we grew from 1 to 600 in 9 months. We were influential as a church. We got into government. We got influence in business. Everything we touched prospered. Why? Because Jesus sat on that well and said, I will give you a lineage and an inheritance all the way from the people who worked in your life in the past, from the Jews to the apostles to the prophets to the pastors, and this well that is far away from you. You are strangers from the commonwealth. I'll bring you into it, and I will ask it to brim up, and I will ask it to be a fountain, and I will ask it to spring up a well. And from the deepest, fastest, furthest recesses, an inheritance will start bringing up. And woman, it will become inside you a fountain that will flow into everlasting life. And the church will be blessed. It's called super irrigation. Your pain is now taken in and put into the church. And everyone who walks through the door now gets what you had to work for, they get it in one day.
Come on.
If you walked into this church for the first day, my friend, you are the most blessed person in this house. Because you just walked into it by grace, and all these people sitting on these seats, they've done a work. All these people have done a work. Each one has brought their pain, their suffering, and you walk through the door, and it's been your first time, my friend. You are a blessed man. Because you're going to get everyone's pain, and you won't have to suffer, but you will be saved in one day, and you'll be redeemed, and you will grow, and you'll be powerful, because you plugged in to a synthesizing system of ages, of an accreditation of justice, and a balancing of the cross upon your life.
Come on.
Let's break bread after this video.